It's Jessica here with a video to talk about this guy. And this guy is Woden, and he is also, I have his head over here, he's also Lear. It's not just a matter of sharing a body. They really are the same character. Different stages of their life, basically, is the simplest way I have of stating that. And ever since I got his head in, that I got Woden's head in, painted by Miss Mantis, and it's absolutely gorgeous. Ever since I got it in, I have been wanting to make a video to talk about Woden, and the story. Basically, I've had a really hard time figuring out how I want to approach the telling of it, because it's kind of like one of those it's kind of like a plot twist that if I give it away, then there's the plot twist. But so I think I'll see how this goes. It's not like I really think I'll get to the point where I will write a story and publish it and that sort of thing. So I guess I'm not overly concerned, but at the same time, it's kind of like one of those little secrets that's kind of like the mystery. I think is interesting too, if that makes any sense. So I think what I'll do is I'll start by talking about what is known, or what is out there, or what I've talked about in the past in regards to these two characters. So, and I apologize for Lola's snoring. She is literally right below the camera. She decided to plop herself down there and start snoring, and it's just the way it is. But I brought Danu over here because she's pretty key to the story of Woden as well, and Lear. So Lear, maybe let's start with him a little bit, because the story really does begin with Lear. Lear is a first generation Fae, meaning the direct descendant of the gods. So essentially a lot of the Fae races were born into existence from gods, and so Danu and Cernunnos, they have their lineage, and Lear has a lineage of two other gods, essentially, that and so he's very powerful. What that all equals to is that he's very, very powerful, because in some ways, I mean, a first generation phase is a very powerful individual, not as strong as a god, but so they're called the Lords of the Fae. The Lords of the Fae are essentially, for the most part, first generation Fae, and because it doesn't necessarily mean that they are good and just rulers, but they are the most powerful, and they tend to rule over the other Fae because of that position of power. But they're individuals with free will and have their own morality, that's not necessarily good, evil, or whatever, in those sorts of kinds of things. So Lear, it's kind of a bit of a mystery exactly how he came to live in Danu's kingdom. He is not one of her descendants, but somehow he became a member of her court. So Eden Sphere is her kingdom, and he some thoughts are that or the rumors that might have gone about was that he was that he lost his kingdom, or in a battle between the Fey Lords, that all number of things might have happened, but a lot believe, or some believe, that the reason he's in Eden Sphere is for Danu. And that probably is a big part of the reason why he is there. So Lear is he is a musician, so music and magics around music is probably one of his strongest aptitudes, I guess is what I would say. I mean, he's just a very powerful being that is skilled and can do a lot of different types of magic and has a lot of abilities that way, but definitely seems to have a big draw towards music. And it's kind of the position that he has been in Danu's court, as his like official position is like her kind of like a servant, but you know, he's a king. So but and he's a servant, just like everybody who lives in Danu's realm could be considered a servant, really, because she is the queen, she is the most powerful one. So that's kind of how that works, like the power play. But anyways, so he's her musician, he's her servant, and it's pretty well, I shouldn't say it's well known, because some are more know more about this. So in a nutshell, Lear's relationship with Danu is that they are lovers, and so it's a bit of a forbidden thing. Danu, I'll bring her over here. Danu is married basically to Cernunnos, who is a god, and together they are the progenitor of the Lurulans, the deer people tribe of Fae. And so, but I think it's probably something that's become more like aware, that I've become aware of in a way that Danu has taken lovers, and because oftentimes these are done to build alliances, but also because of her breeding program, essentially, that she has ideas. Her mate and who she is, like, officially their domain and their kingdom, it's her and Cernunnos. I mean, that is kind of like forever and always this thing. But she does keep lovers, and some of it might be just a dalliance for her. It's amusing. She enjoys it, to do things to do different things, basically, to do something different. It keeps life interesting, is what I would say. So I guess that does say a little bit about Danu's character. And so it's not a blatant, out in the open relationship that she has with Lear. There's probably plenty that suspect, but most that live in Eden Sphere, I mean, they wouldn't. She's the queen and she's a goddess, and what she does, it's not up to any of them to question. So, but at the same point, you know, there is like a certain standard to be maintained in behavior, and so it isn't out in the open, this relationship, even though many probably know about it. And it's probable that Cernunnos knows. I think it's one of those things that, like, in Cernunnos's mind, Lear is so far below him that it's a joke to him, basically. He probably, I bet you, I can imagine that he's probably a bit of a bully to Lear. He doesn't really see Lear as a threat. So that's probably, you know, how that scenario works. And if Sturm ever did perceive one of these dalliances as an actual threat to his and Danu's relationship, or his position with her in their lives, if he ever did think that that was an actual threat, that individual would not last long, very likely, or depending on how powerful the individual would be a war. It would be a war. So that's something I don't think I've talked about an awful lot. Maybe I've hinted at, and maybe I have talked to some people about it, are more aware of this situation than others. So so let's see, how do I want to talk about this? So let's talk about Woden and some of the things. Can you sit up, honey? She's been loose ever since I took away her neck joint. You know, she doesn't sit good. There we go. Okay, so let's talk about Woden. Let's talk about what we know about Woden, and what his story, what his public story is, I guess. So Woden is, or was, Herla's mentor in medicine. He is the individual that Elandria called on to save Herla. And the story at the time was that the Wild Hunt was going to sweep both of them up, Elandria and her daughter Herla. So she called Woden to take Herla and basically save her. And that ended up in the separation between mother and daughter. And there's a big story and blog that I did with my friends at the time that entailed a bunch of our characters. And so that's a big story. But it's part of the known history of these characters. Woden, and this is something that I've written a little bit, just kind of like in my journal and such, about how things might have been when Herla was growing up, basically, because my idea of the situation was that she went to Woden's kingdom. At some point, he took her to the forest to be protected and hidden there, and that's where she met her husband Gehern, and a lot of her history happens there. But I have written some about how things were when she was being raised by Woden, and perhaps I'll talk more about my ideas surrounding that, especially having him here. I think about that a lot more now too. What's some other things that we know about Woden? So another thing that that's part of the lore is that when Nila was born, the Fey Lords decided in a council that they wanted to eliminate Nila. And because she was considered a threat, she was what Danu had been trying to make all along. She is that thing. So she's something that is predicted to be the destruction of the Fey race, if not the entire world, which a lot of the Fey Lords that are skilled in foreseeing and prophesying, they foretold. So basically the council decided that she needed to be killed and eliminated, and Woden was sent to do that. He didn't kill her, but he did curse her into a permanent sleep, basically. And her family and friends saved Nila from that. But that shows the dual alliances that Woden has. That he was the one that Alondria called to save Herla. He is the one that the Grey Lords, or the Lords of the Fae, sent to kill Herla's daughter, Neela. And the fact that he didn't kill Neela but put her into a permanent sleep, which is kind of like death in a way, but he didn't kill her. And she was able to be saved and rescued from that. Which if he killed her, then no, she wouldn't have been able to be saved and rescued. So these are the things that we know about Woden. Woden, we know that Woden is very, very ancient. That is something that's always been known about him. Herla always talks about her memories of the time being, even though she knows medicine extensively, and her training is very extensive, a lot of her memories of time with Woden are very foggy. But things that she would always say about him is that he was very distant, and not always seeming, not just distant, but sometimes vacant. And so that's something that we know about Woden too, is that it was always been attributed to his age, of how old he was, is that they tend to check out. And they may have times in their life where they're very involved with the lives around them, and then there may be many thousands of hundreds of years where they're not. They can kind of sometimes forget some things. When you live that long, there's some things that are going to be forgotten. And this is part of the condition of beings that live as long as this, but are not gods. Gods don't suffer from this quite as much because they were made that way, basically. And so the first generation creatures like Woden sometimes have more difficulties and more problems. But as my story has progressed, there's probably some other reasons why Woden has the problems he has with basically checking out and disconnecting and not always being attentive to what is happening around him and responding appropriately to what is happening, if that makes sense. So this is where I did write a short story, a very, very short story, and I think, did I read? Yes, I read that. Okay, so we know that Woden is a Fey Lord, and that the Fey Lords did not, they tried to also, or they wanted a way to stop Danu. And I think that this is where I'm trying to decide how much of the story I want to tell and give away. And I guess if you guys are listening to this whole long video, then maybe I will go ahead and tell the whole story. But so in the story, the Fey Lords, together with Lear's magic, they create a way to stop Danu. And the only way that they could do this, to even begin to think that they could possibly kill Danu, is if they had an inside. And Lear is that inside. And they get him to agree to their plan because basically he does love Danu, and he knows his position can never change, that that he will never be her husband. He will never be that. And it kind of makes him a bit crazy. I don't like, oh, he's crazy and that's why did the things he did, and so we have to forgive him because he's crazy. Not, but basically he's not great. You know, he's making a decision to do something that's not super great. So in these ways, he could be considered a villain, but it's oftentimes more complicated than that. I feel like I should be holding Lear's head for this part so that you know who I'm talking about, and I tend to forget too. So yeah, so Lear is a bit of a villain in this way, is that he agrees to the Fey Lord's plan to get rid of Danu. And basically they work their magics together, but the only way this will work is if basically Danu has to agree or accept. It's the only way that they can overpower her, basically. So they make a stone. It's a magic stone, and Lear is going to basically give this as a gift to Danu, and she will accept the gift because of their relationship, and this will allow them to, well, the Fey Lords, they want to kill her. I mean, that is their goal. They want to stop what is going to happen. They want to stop what the prophecies are saying, that that she's going to be successful in this breeding program, which she does become successful in it. Neela is created. So this is what I should also say, is that this is her and Lear together is actually occurring a very, very, very long time ago, and perhaps even before humanity exists. So it's a very long time ago. This is how far back, and that's part of the story that's a little bit, because Lear is in Eden Sphere right now with all the rest of these, like her progeny. So to Danu, this is not confusing or strange, because gods move through time differently, and this is not, that's not a difficult thing for them to cope with. But so he basically, this is, you know, long time ago, because that's also part of the story, is that Danu is gone. Like during the time that Neela is created or is born, Danu is gone. She's not around when Elandria has to call on Woden. Danu has always been around for her family, watching over them, guiding her breeding program essentially. But during all of these times, she's not there. So this is the reason why, is Lear gives her this stone, and he has been promised that this will this will trap Danu, and he will be able to have her for himself. This is what the bargain has been, is that this will be what it is. And Fae can't lie, but they can certainly mislead, and they definitely mislead Lear. Their goal is to kill or destroy her. His goal is to trap her for himself, basically. So what actually happens is that he gives her the stone, and I've always had this kind of scene that I someday wanted to write, but I guess I'll verbalize it now, is that Lear comes to Danu to give her the stone, and she already knows. She already knows that he's going to give her this and what it's going to mean, and because she exists in all times, and but she accepts it. She accepts the stone, and it does trap her. She's essentially trapped in the stone. And this is where the mythology behind the opal that Neela wears. This is where the opal came from. It is Danu. It's a trapped goddess, and so when this happens, because Danu is gone, it essentially in a way does kill her, and Lear is kind of like driven insane by this, because he did love her, and he didn't want to kill her, but that's, in a way, this is what has happened, is that she's gone, and she is locked away from everybody, including him, and she's trapped in this stone, and he does not have the power to release her from it. But so that is when he becomes Woden, and in some ways he becomes more powerful, and in others he becomes less powerful. He's a little bit mentally moth-eaten, brain and memories, and he's not the same, but he has custody of the stone, basically, and he makes a promise, that he will carry on Danu's work, that he will carry on and look after her family, since she can't do it now. And so that's where this comes in, that when Alondria needs help, it's Woden that she calls, because he is the one that looks over the family now. Because once Danu has been basically killed, Cernunnos kind of leaves too. They're connected in that way, and he becomes unreachable too, because of their connection. So Woden's it in all his how should I put this? He's just not all there. He's just not all there. And he's the one that's left now to look after Danu's family. So that was long and rambling. I'm going to have to edit this a lot, but that's kind of basically the gist of everything. If you guys have questions, or some things that you would like to know more about, feel free to let me know about that. And I'm not very good at writing out answers, especially if they tend to be longer, but it might be something that I talk about more in another video. So if you guys want to put those down below, you're always welcome to. And I should be having my package here pretty soon, any moment now. So box opening video, hopefully today.